I love stories far too much to keep them to myself.
And that's why I share them with you guys whenever I can. But there are, of course, good stories and bad stories. What's the difference?
The difference is...
Well, in a good story, there's some shit that characters want or need to do for reasons, and the plans that they set into motion to achieve their goals comes into conflict with some other shit that other characters want or need to do. Allow me then to regale you with a story of how I came into possession of the album Foxtrot by Genesis. Well, I really wanted to buy that album, but I had no money, because I was a non-person at the time, also known as a filthy teenager. So it became obvious to me that I had to get a job. That was back in the day when getting a job was super easy, barely an inconvenience as they say. And so I did. And 15 days later, it was time for me to collect my first paycheck, and the prospect of acquiring Foxtrot was finally within reach. I deposited the check at the nearest bank agency and immediately withdrew the exact amount of cash that I needed to buy the prized album at my favorite record store. Said record store was just a few blocks away from my bank agency, but it was a pretty dangerous street, one that was pseudo-famous at the time for all the robberies that had taken place recently. There was this one particularly scary part of the street that went under a bridge that had me specially worried, but circumventing the perilous road would have taken hours, and my anxiety to finally get that album was much too high for me to even consider an alternative path. So I committed to the journey, more scared than a Disney producer waiting for the user scores of their most recent TV show, and all the way through, being the unyielding optimist that I've always been, I couldn't help but to imagine all sorts of gruesome tragedies that would bring my first commercial transaction involving my own money to an end before it even happened. But the walk was thankfully uneventful, and after 15 minutes, I found myself at the record store ready to make my first purchase. "Enjoy your purchase," said the tacky yet fuckable lady with the Halloween tattoo on her arm and the piercing on her nose. "Oh, I will," I answered. Now, I certainly enjoyed Foxtrot because of its own technical and artistic merits, but my appreciation of the record went and still goes far beyond whatever the band and the record's production crew had to do to put it out there. I sacrificed an important part of my first salary to get it, and I had to run Naruto style to the record store out of fear that thugs would ambush me and rob me of my hard-earned cash. And that means that I love Foxtrot because I have a special story with it. Now let's talk about some of your gaming stories. How about the one about the guy who invited one of his friends over to his house to show him Duke Nukem, just so that they could see the titties on the strippers in the game? Or the one about the guy who had to play Diablo 2 in secret because his parents thought it was the work of Satan? These are all real-life examples. In fact, most of these stories were shared by you guys over on Discord. And what do you have at the core of most of these stories? Struggle, obstacles, difficulties. Goal: I wanted to buy Foxtrot. Obstacle: I had no money. Solution: I got a job. Obstacle: the area between the bank and the record store was dangerous. Solution: I ran Naruto style almost all the way through. Goal: you wanted to show your friends the stripper flashing her titties in Duke Nukem. Obstacle: you couldn't let your mother catch you in the act. If your mother had caught you, she would have found out that Duke Nukem was not the wholesome game she thought it was. Solution: you snuck like a little scoundrel. Goal: you wanted to play one of the best games ever made with your friends. Obstacle: your parents thought the game could turn you into a devil worshipper. Solution: you snuck like a little scoundrel. Now that I think of it, you guys are sneaky little scoundrels who like to keep shit from your moms, aren't you? I think some spanking is in order. Now, I am well aware that my story with Foxtrot is specific to me, just like these gaming stories you shared over on Discord are specific to each of you. Nowadays, however, it's far more likely that someone who wants to listen to Foxtrot for the first time is simply going to look it up on YouTube or Spotify. And the farther away we get from the good old days of physical media, the less likely it is for there to be stories like yours or mine. Rick Beato seems to think this is the real reason why music is getting worse.
Music is too easy to consume.
When I was a kid, if I wanted to buy this Led Zeppelin II record, I had to get a job or borrow money from my parents to buy it because I wanted to own it. I wanted it to be in my collection. This album here, Pat Metheny, New Chautauqua, I paid $8 for, brand new, with the money that I made by bagging groceries at Tops grocery store in Fairport, New York. You actually had to expend energy riding your bike or walking to your job, working your shift, getting your paycheck at the end of the week, depositing it in the bank, getting money out, going to the record store, buying the record, bringing it home, playing it, listening to it a bunch of times, going over to your friend's house, sharing it with them.
You see, there is a little story, and that's also the reason why he took a deep dive into the album, savoring every note, giving it his undivided attention for many listens. And it's also the reason why he took an interest in learning the names of everyone involved in the production of the record. Records were also more important back in the day. As users, we had access to far fewer titles. Much as it happened with games in the 80s and 90s, even those of us who were lucky only had a handful of games, counting the ones that we owned and the ones we borrowed from our friends. And this way to consume entertainment also shaped the way in which records and games were made, I reckon. There was this band, Under the Sun, that released an album with the same name in the year 1998. I must have listened to that record more than 100 times, more than 200 times. And it was so fucking impressive that every single time I listened to it, I found a new little detail hidden away within the mix, a bass line that I hadn't caught before, a subtle panning of the vocals to further emphasize the dynamic nature of time in a song that was about that, the repetition of the chorus from the 3rd track in the 9th track that could only be heard if you paid a lot of attention because it was intentionally buried in the mix because both songs were connected thematically. It was a record that got better with every listen rather than tired or spent. But that was also the intended experience, just like Arcanum, Fallout, and Baldur's Gate 2 were designed to be played more than once. But that's not how most records, or games for that matter, are made these days. And the precious few that are, we don't appreciate as much. We have access to too many games nowadays. Our backlogs are huge, to the point that we even rob ourselves of playing games that we enjoyed for a second time because we need to try the next hot game that's right up our alley, or because we need to scratch a few titles of our backlog. Whatever the case may be, I am positively convinced that we are not enjoying games now as much as we did back in the day, or music for that matter. I have a friend who is a huge music fan, and whenever anyone mentions Spotify, he says, "Spotify I no like, vinyl records me like." And if I'm honest with you, I'm pretty convinced that he enjoys music a lot more than we do, because rather than listening to endless hours of new music and churning through entire band catalogs like there's no tomorrow, like the average Spotify user does, he has a few choice bands that he's interested in, and he unintentionally turns the acquisition of each of these records into a story. He goes to the fucking store, buys the fucking special edition of these records, you know, the one with all the special booklets, art books, bonus CDs, etc. And he makes it a ritual to sit down and listen to the record all by himself, and he gives each of these records his undivided attention. And many of them he listens until he's milked every bit of juice and enjoyment out of the album. And yes, there are bands and musicians that are doing this with their new music in the year 2024. And you know what? There are also video game developers that do this. More so, they make sure that your experience playing these games is unique, thus turning every playthrough into a personal story that you won't soon forget. So do records like Under the Sun and games like, yes, Outward belong in a different era? Or are they meant to be appreciated by a special kind of audience? The kind of audience that still sticks to the old-fashioned ritualistic experience? Well, let's find out, shall we? Welcome to Ye Old Entertainment. My name is Alex, and as you know, it is my duty, my mission, my purpose in life to help you decide whether that game that you have been plucking daisies about for so long is indeed the right game for you or not. And I know that many of you have been plucking daisies about this one for a long time, but
I got some bad news for you, sunshine.
Chances are
You're all not worthy.
Nah, don't get your panties in a bunch, guys. let's say that maybe the game is not worthy of you. Yeah, let's put it that way instead. How about that? But why? See, if you are willing to accept that bad decisions have bad, often long-lasting consequences that you cannot undo with a click of a button, if you are willing to accept that you are the one who needs to adapt to the way in which the game deals with gear, survival, combat, and questing, rather than the other way around, if you are willing to accept that
Everything in
Outward,
takes 4 hours.
if you are willing to forget about getting back to the newest, hottest title or to your endless backlog for a couple of months or 3, if for you the feeling of accomplishment is directly proportional to the sacrifices that you have to make to achieve your goals, then you might just be in the select camp of those very select people who say stuff like this.
Today's video, I would like to talk about a diamond in the rough, a ruby in the burlap sack. I'd like to present to you guys a game that has a special place in my heart, Outward. A game that I've regarded as one of the best indie RPG experiences of all time. This video is not sponsored. I'm doing this because I really enjoyed this game when I played it last year, and I'm really excited to play it again.
Outward is a game with depth that really can't be truly understood by watching a trailer. You have to get in there and actually play it yourself.
I lived and breathed Outward, creating this very channel from that game. Outward made my channel, and it is to this day my favorite RPG.
If, on the other hand, any of these phrases identifies you, can't save and restore whenever I want, deal breaker. I can lose everything at any given time, deal breaker. No fast travel, I don't have time for walking simulators, deal breaker. The map doesn't tell you where you are, and you need to look around at landmarks to more or less pinpoint your location, deal breaker. No quest markers, deal breaker. Not all locations and dungeons have quests attached to them, deal breaker. Well, if that's the case,
You're all not worthy.
then do yourself a favor and don't play Outward. Or do, and find out that these things that you don't usually like can actually make your achievements feel super mega awesome beyond anything you've experienced so far.
Whoa. It's a pretty big claim, son. Let's hope you can back that up.
Yes, I can. But whatever you do, for the love of God, do not install mods and do not hack the game to circumvent any of these things I mentioned. Do not rob yourself of the good story, because a good story entails sacrifices and struggle. Don't rob yourself of the sacrifices you need to make to accomplish your goals, or even the tedium. Don't be this guy. He doesn't get it. He may speak highly of the game, but he is not worthy of it.
How dare you judge me?
I usually don't, but I am going to make an exception with Outward and this guy. You already have a version of Outward that has fast travel, quest markers, the possibility to save and restore whenever you want, and enemies everywhere. A version of Outward in which you are the chosen one. It's called Skyrim. And you can even mod it to your heart's content to bring it as close to the Outward experience as you wish. But don't do that to Outward or to yourself. As you know, I review games using a system of categories that I think are relevant to the genre of the game at hand. But not today. See, this game isn't about its character creation and character progression system. It isn't even about its gameplay mix, and it's certainly not about the story and lore. There are no companions, and the less said about the user experience of some very basic standard quality of life features, the better. See, like Foxtrot, this game is not great because of what is contained in the package, or at least not only because of that. It's great because of the story of how I played it, and it's great because you will have your own story should you decide to give it a chance. Things become immortal because of the stories that are attached to them. And today, I am going to share with you the story of Alexandra, because Alex would have been too ugly no matter which options I had taken. Jesus, these male character models are fucking hideous. But just in case I don't do justice to the game with the story I'm about to tell you, know that this is one of the best RPGs ever. The feeling of adventure is incomparable, the emergent gameplay aspect of the game is top tier, it has some of the best dungeons in the realm of RPGs, it has some of the most interesting builds, its music is amongst the best music of the last decade, and its character progression system and survival elements serve to elevate the core experience that the developers were going for, which is to go out there and make your own adventure. So Alexandra started her journey as a castaway only a few dozen meters away from her hometown of Cierzo, conveniently enough. Why was she on that ship along with her pal Isan? Well, apparently her grandmother fucked up many years ago and caused some serious material losses to Cierzo. So Alexandra had to pay a blood price for her grandmother's fuck-ups, and that's why she agreed to embark upon an expedition to bring back enough riches to make up for what her grandmother had done, whatever that was. But luck was not on her side, and the ship wrecked almost as soon as it departed. So she found herself half dead and half naked on the shore just outside Cierzo. So after collecting some clothes and fashioning a crude torch, she ventured forth to see what she could find. Fearing that she might have to spend the night outside the gates of her own hometown, she procured some food and clean water from a nearby stream. Luckily for her, she found a machete on a corpse, which turned out to be a very fortunate event, because she then went to check out a hollow trunk nearby, and while she was at it, she caught the attention of two angry hyenas. She hesitated for a moment, but eventually made the wise decision to drop everything but the machete and run for her life. She was fully aware that, in her poor condition, and wielding only a rusty blade, and because I had played the game twice before, she wouldn't be able to take on two angry hyenas at once. She eventually managed to isolate her two opponents and take them down individually. Not without a bit of struggle though. Once the two hyenas were dead, she went back to pick up everything she had dropped because she was definitely going to need to sell all that shit to get some cash. She could not stop thinking of the calamity that the sea expedition had turned out to be, and about the huge increment on her blood price that it would bring. She eventually ran into her buddy Isan, who was in a similar situation. Isan had been able to put together a little shelter, and he invited Alexandra to use one of the bedrolls and take a rest. So Alexandra and Isan had a short conversation, and she learned that their buddy Eto, who was also aboard the ship, had survived the ordeal and had already made it back to Cierzo. Not much for tribal solidarity, this one, huh? After the brief conversation, Alexandra took up Isan on his offer and slipped into the bedroll to rest for a few hours. As it turned out, the rest prolonged into the next morning, but she somehow awoke in the comfort of her house, the lighthouse building that her family had been in charge of for generations, a job that they had seemingly not been very good at. After making some breakfast, Alexandra decided to leave her house and face the music. And that happened almost immediately, because an angry mob of Cierzo villagers was just outside demanding that she be evicted from her very home, because of how far behind her family had fallen on the payment of their blood price. It seemed that, to the consequences of whatever fuck-up Alexandra had inherited from her grandmother, she now needed to add the cost of Cierzo's latest failed sea expedition. And that all boiled down to paying 150 silver to Cierzo or getting a writ of tribal favor. Now, Alexandra was not crazy about the fact that she could be evicted from her house because of something that she didn't do. And hey, it is what it is, you inherit debt just as well as wealth from your ancestors. But this blood price had collectivist society written all over it. And I didn't like that one bit. I wanted to get the fuck out of that town in that instant. And hey, I could have packed my bags and gotten the hell out of there, never to return. And listen, that can be your character's story. You can fuck off into the wilds as soon as you get the chance, if you hate collectivism as much as I do and don't mind the risks, and take on the main quest in the name of other people, which means that you'd be doing completely different shit as a main quest. Not bad, huh? But I felt like Alexandra needed to be realistic. She had nothing, no money, no food, and nowhere to go to. I felt like she needed a house, if only to have a place to stay while she planned how to get the hell out of there. So she stayed in Cierzo and decided to play by their rules, you know, because she couldn't expect the whole damn town to change the rules because she didn't like them, could she? So she walked around the village for a bit, she talked to people, and picked up a few things that she later sold for a few silvers. Some people asked her to do a few things for them, like preparing ceviche with her family's famous recipe, or gathering a rare unique mushroom that just so happened to grow only at the very bottom of a trog-infested cave. She was eventually going to have to leave Cierso to make some money and to get some of these things done, so she crafted an attire that was better suited for the rigors of battle than the clothes that she was currently wearing. She made a few bandages, because you never know, and she also learned a few recipes and cooked a few meals. Because meals are important in the world of Outward. Food does all sorts of things for you. All dishes prevent you from going hungry, of course, but some of them have special bonuses. Some restore your health, or your stamina, or your mana, or all three things. Some make you hit harder, some make you more resistant to certain types of weather, or to certain types of elemental damage, or to poison, or to corruption. Some even make you run faster. Bottom line is, food is important in Outward. And you can buy recipes from many vendors, find some others while you're out there exploring the world, or you can experiment by throwing in random ingredients in a cauldron to see what happens. She also procured an oil lamp, because the woman who wanted her to get the special mushroom said that the cave where the mushroom could be found was dark. She also packed a bedroll. Not that she was planning to spend the night out of Cierso, but you never know, right? She also kept some of the items that she had, found that could be used as weapons. So she took a look at the map and pinpointed the location of the map where the mushroom was said to be, and used the visual references around her to get to it. The caves were inhabited by trogs, just as the woman said. And these trogs turned out to be a little bit harder than I had anticipated. So Alexandra's priorities immediately changed to not dying, because trust me, you don't want to get knocked down in this game. Not ever. And if you play in hardcore mode, there's a chance you won't wake up at all if that happens. Just putting that out there. So she took extra care not to bite off more than she could chew. She always took on one enemy at the time. She never chased runners, because I am old enough to know that that's 101 ambush tactics. And she always kited the bad guys to the entrance of the cave so that she could cheese the fuck out if things got ugly. She collected a few things, went back and forth between Cierso and the cave to sell some of the stuff, but it wasn't as profitable as I was expecting, which is the story of my life, so no surprise there. But Alexandra's stamina was waning and she was getting tired, but she couldn't afford to sleep. She only had a few days to collect the silver for her blood prize, and things weren't looking good financially for her. So she ventured into the wilds once again. She got attacked by hyenas, got infected with a nasty disease, and had to almost crawl back to Cierso. In fact, she could have easily died if she had not drank that spicy tea that she bought from the local alchemist. She took note of that experience, bought the spicy tea recipe from a vendor, learned how to prepare it, and went back home to make a few of them just in case. Alexandra's previous outings had taught her that if she was going to survive out there, her current fighting technique wasn't going to cut it. So she went to Eto, overlooking the fact that he survived the wreck and got the fuck out of there instead of staying and helping out other potential survivors like Izan did. And she asked him to teach her a few skills. Now, Eto didn't exactly show solidarity with his prices, but some of the stuff he could teach Alexandra was crucial to her survival and necessary to progress further into the build that I wanted for her. So she shelled out the big bucks and got ready to use what she had learned. Alexandra's previous exploration attempts into the eastern wilds of Chersonese didn't turn out to be very profitable, so she decided to go to the beach west of Cierso instead this time. Luckily for her, on the road to the beach, there were a couple of things lying about that she could sell for some profit. But she really struck gold when she ran into this guy, a fellow Ciersan who had been badly injured by some nasty shore-dwelling monsters. Alexandra offered to help him by bandaging him up a little. And wouldn't you know it, out of pure gratitude, the man produced and signed a writ of tribal favor, just like that. Alexandra had been so focused on getting the 150 silver to pay for her blood price that she had forgotten that the writ of tribal favor was also an option. So just like that, she was ready to go back to Cierso with an almost free get-out-of-jail ticket and additional spare money to spend in her pocket. She then went to talk to Risa, the old lady who ran the show in Cierso, and after declaring that Alexandra's debt had been settled for now, she told her to go and talk to her two buddies, Isan and Oliel, both of whom had already made their minds to leave Cierso. Gee, I wonder why that would be. So Alexandra went to talk to her friends to see what they had to say, and Oliel said that she was going to Monsoon to serve the human-turned-god Elat, which in my eyes meant that she was changing one form of authoritarian rulership for another one, but who am I to judge? So Alexandra told her that she was going to be missed and bid her farewell. And then she went to hear what Isan had to say. Isan was a cool dude. A couple of days before, when Alexandra told him that she wasn't crazy about how things were done in Cierso, he said, "Your life is your own. You choose what to do and where to go. Just because a choice is hard, doesn't mean that you can't take it." Now, there's a man of the constrained vision of the world. I just love the subtext that runs from beginning to end in this game. But it turned out that Alexandra's friend Isan had also a blood prize on him because of some things his brother had done. And his brother was perfectly alive, kicking, in his right mind, and fit to work. Oh, so that's how blood prizes work in Cierso. You not only have to honor the debts that you've inherited from your dead relatives, but if any of your family members fucks up while they're still alive, your entire family is indebted to the town. Yup, this is definitely not the place for me. So Isan went on to say, "I've got a little fishing barge to my name, and by a lot I'm going to use it. I'm leaving for the heroic kingdom of Levant, never to darken this stain of a city ever again. It's a place where you can do what you were meant to do without having to answer to oppressive tribal laws and the misdeeds of your ancestors. You succeed or fail on your own merits, no one else's. You succeed or fail on your own merits, no one else's. I already love Levant." So of course Alexandra asked Isan if she could go with him, but unfortunately Isan gave her the middle finger with a very bad excuse. I guess she would just have to figure out how to get there on her own. After all, Isan didn't owe her anything, but he still gave Alexandra directions to his hidden stash and the password that unlocked the chest. But Levant was pretty freaking far, and Alexandra just wasn't ready to make the trip, so she would have to stay a little longer and get ready. Someone in town said that there was this wise old hermit living somewhere in Chersonese, west of the ancient ruins by the Cabal of the Wind Tower, that could teach Alexandra some pretty badass magics and fighting techniques. Well, I knew that was probably going to entail walking all the way to the ruins, navigating a monster-infested dungeon, emerging on the other side, and spending at least half a day walking to the Wind Tower. And Alexandra was definitely not ready for that. So she decided to explore a little more to see if she could gather some resources to craft or buy better gear, but she ended up wasting a lot of time doing nothing. She eventually got lost, tired, and overburdened, and had to spend the night in this cave. This guy scared the ever-living shit out of her at first. Wasn't this one of the Immaculate Ones? That big bad otherworldly sentient species that the world had been at war with? He turned out to be friendly though, and he even gave Alexandra a new backpack and allowed her to camp there. The next day she went back to Cierso, sold a few more trinkets for a few more coins, and went back out into Chersonese to gather more stuff. She went to the place where Isan's stash was supposed to be found, and sure enough, there it was. The password also turned out to be legit, so that was that. Alexandra eventually ran into this guy, who was a bit out of her league, but she really wanted that freaking shield. And he was a bandit, so that was fair game. The bandit turned out to be a lot more agile than I had given him credit for, though. But Alexandra eventually got the better of him, and his shield. I felt brave and empowered, so I thought I'd have Alexandra pay a visit to the local bandit camp. She picked up a few fights, and after a few easy victories, she got a little cocky, and that almost ended up with her going back to Cierso in a black plastic body bag. But in the end, it turned out to be nothing she couldn't deal with a good old hit-and-run cheesery. At some point, I felt like Alexandra was ready to brave the ancient ruins east of Chersonese and make it to the Cabal of the Wind Tower. So she took a long rest, packed a few provisions, and made sure she had everything she needed for a 2-day trip. And so she embarked upon the adventure. Once inside the ruins, she found a few bottles of spirit varnish, which came in handy to fight some of the skelly spirits she found down in the dungeon. After creeping around for a while, she found herself in a room with an elite spirit skelly. That motherfucker was something else, and it almost made Alexandra's journey come to a tragic end. But through the right combination of cheese and bravery, she eventually felled the skelly and opened the gates to venture further into the dungeon. A couple more skellies and a rusty old elevator later, she found herself at the other end of the ruins. And though I was on a mission, something told me that it was a good idea to look around for a little bit. So I decided to explore the second floor for a bit. Alexandra went down a corridor and dispatched a couple of more skellies for no other reason than reckless wanderlust, but it paid off tremendously because she found a way to unlock a direct shortcut that would dramatically shorten the trip back home. So after unlocking the shortcut, Alexandra went back and left the ruins through the easternmost exit. She found herself out in the open once again and kept pushing east until the Tower of Winds appeared on the horizon. She was almost there, only a few kilometers away. She had to outrun a dangerous looking monster, but outrunning bad guys is almost the name of the game in Outward. You can outrun 90% of the enemies, even if you're out of stamina. The game is probably not called Outrun because there already is a game called that. Alexandra also had to sort out a cloud of corruption, poison, or whatever, but she eventually made it to the Hermit's shack. Quite a nice place out here in the middle of nowhere. The Hermit wasn't against trading for all the oddities that Alexandra found in the ruins and providing safe shelter for her for the night. He was also keen on sharing his pearls of martial and magic wisdom with her, for a fee that she didn't have at the time. But she was the stoic, optimistic type, so rather than taking her expedition as a complete waste of time, she saw it as an informational trip. She wouldn't have made it if she had had internet, but then again, if she had used one of those beginner guides, she would have maximized all of her excursions to the fullest, because she would have been able to kill several birds with one stone each time. And that would have sucked ass, because it would have watered down the sweetness of the feeling of accomplishment quite significantly. At least it was a good thing that Alexandra found that shortcut in the ruins, so she had that going for her, which was nice. She spent the night at the Hermit's house, traded for some goodies, and the next day she went back the way she came. It was time though to make a critical decision. That old hag Risa, who acted as the de facto leader of the insufferable commune of Cierso, said that the blood prize on my family could be completely forgiven if I met her in Berg and did something for our people at the Blue Chamber Collective's council there. But was that what Alexandra really wanted? Maybe it was time for her to throw her lot with the capitalist libertarian kingdom of Levant. Maybe it was time to start living the dream. Maybe it was time to leave this communal hellhole behind and holy shit, look at that loot. I'm sticking with the commies, it seems. So I planned for a long trip, packed a cauldron, an alchemy set, and a decent tent, and set off to the Emikar Forest to see what the big deal with the Blue Chamber Collective's council was about. I had to go from end to end of Chersonese, cross over to the Emikar Forest, and walk all the way to Berg. Nice town, lots of merchants and vendors everywhere, and an ominous looking building on top of a plateau. But after a long trip, I really wasn't in the mood to do any sightseeing, so I went straight to talk to Risa. She then brought up that dreaded moment. Alexandra, are you going to throw your lot with Cierso for this council thing? Well, there's nothing more capitalist than doing something for your own benefit, right? Well, if that means siding with the commies to get the precious loot, then so be it, I guess. So the next thing I knew was that Alexandra needed someone else's approval to be fully accepted as a member of the council on behalf of the Aberdeens. That's Risa's family, by the way. Well, okay, what do I need to do? She asked the dude in question. Oh, nothing much, he said. You need magic. Magic? Yeah, you know that big mountain in the middle of Chersonese? Well, that's where you're going to find your magic. Are you shitting me right now? I was just there a few days ago. Damn it, Risa, you knew this guy was going to demand that I have magical aptitudes. Couldn't you have warned me while I was still in Cierso that I was going to need to go to the Mana Mountain? Oh well, I guess I'll explore my surroundings for a while before I head back. Outward is a game in which city authorities let you set up camp anywhere inside the cities, which makes inns and taverns completely pointless. So Alexandra spent the night in her tent near a fireplace in the very middle of town, and the next day she set out back to Chersonese. And, surprise, surprise, winter had arrived to Chersonese. Damn it, I didn't anticipate this, and Alexandra didn't have any proper clothes, so she had to stop every few kilometers to set up a fireplace and warm up a little. Because trust me, you don't want to catch a cold in winter in Chersonese. She even went into the Immaculate's cave that she had been to previously to take shelter from the cold. It was a difficult trip, much more than I had anticipated, but it also made my return to Cierzo feel more like an accomplishment. So Alexandra dropped a few things at her place. Good thing she didn't give the middle finger to the whole blood price thing, or she wouldn't even have a place. She packed a few other things, and the next day she set out to the Mana Mountain. I thought she could make it without winter clothes, you know? Walking about with torches, stopping every once in a while to set up a fire, and only doing stuff during the day. It's an amateur move, guys. Don't do it if you play this game. Buy proper winter clothes, I tell you. So because I was lazy and a miser who didn't want to buy proper clothes, I made Alexandra's journey terribly difficult. But after stopping a few times to fend off the cold, she finally made it to one of the entrances of the Conflux Mountain. Yep, that was what the Mana Mountain was officially called. A guard there told Alexandra that she was at the Holy Mission's Conflux path, which was said to be, out of the 3 paths available, the quickest way into the Conflux chambers, which was my final destination. It was also the toughest one according to the guard himself. Alexandra tried to venture forth into the chambers, but she was completely overwhelmed by giant prongs and nasty troglodytes. It quickly became clear that she was in way over her head, even with the guard's help. She made a desperate run to the exit and barely made it out of there alive. There was no way she could go back into the Conflux chambers through that entrance. The other entrance, however, was quite far, and she was not in the best condition to make the trip after her encounter with those foul creatures. But she had no other choice but to try and get to the other entrance, if only to find a place to rest and take shelter from the cold. But the path was difficult and she was ill prepared. She eventually managed to make it to the Blue Chamber's entrance of the Conflux Mountain. But I knew Alexandra's chances of braving the labyrinth that laid ahead were slim to none in her present condition. So she thought it wiser to take the laws and head back to Cierzo. The weather got the better of her on the way back though, and she caught a nasty cold on top of everything. She had some soothing tea on her, which she always kept handy for these occasions, but even the miraculous infusion needed time to work its magic, so she decided to take a break until the next day before trying again. Rested and ready, Alexandra embarked upon the journey to the Mana Mountain once again. This time she wasted no effort or resources and went directly to the Blue Chamber's entrance. This entrance was said to be easier, but there was also no turning back, and I actively tried to avoid these types of situations, especially in Outward. Alexandra jumped into the labyrinth and started making her way. There was a terrifying, unexpected encounter with a giant prong that she almost didn't survive, but that turned out to be the greatest challenge that awaited her down there. She carefully walked the dimly lit passageways, occasionally running into a trog or two, and with a combination of stealth, ranged cheese, and choke point tactics, she managed to survive all the patrols, albeit by the skin of her teeth sometimes. And after sorting out the labyrinthian passageways, she finally found the door into the Conflux Chamber area. There were still a few scary dark bits of dungeon ahead of her, but after a few minutes, the magnificent underground chamber met Alexandra's eyes. After 2 days and dozens of silver worth of supplies, she was finally there. And words are not enough to describe the feeling of accomplishment that ran through me at the time. I spent the rest of the day talking to the locals, learning about magic, trading, and finally giving in to magic. Was Alexandra going to fully give in to the Harry Potter way of things? Was she going to walk some middle ground between magic bolts and brawn? Or was she going to consort with the mystical forces of nature just enough to be accepted into the Aberdeen team for the Blue Chamber Collective? I already knew what I wanted Alexandra to become later in life. In fact, I decided to stick with the commies because I knew they had the loot that was better suited to my endgame build. And this build didn't require too much magic, so she went with the bare minimum. Then it was finally time to go back to Cierzo. Back in her hometown, it was the usual Alexandra pre-travel ritual at this point, resting, repairing, cooking, and packing provisions. And the next day, off she went back to Berg. After braving the weather once again, Alexandra finally made it to the Emmekar forest, and from then on out it was a straight shot to Berg. Almost as soon as she arrived, she was asked to attend her first council meeting. And much to my surprise, her friend Oliel was there. She didn't seem too happy, but she also didn't want to talk about it. At some point during the meeting, Alexandra was asked to look for some people who were supposed to be at the inn, or to get some pizza or something, I forget what. And just as she was on her way to get it, she heard a huge bang coming from the council building. So she ran back to find out the bandits had broken into the council and were attacking the council members. I helped the good guys win the day, and then I was told that Risa and a council member called Balthasar had been taken prisoners by the bandits, and that they had fled to the underground catacombs. So Alexandra made haste and chased after them. The place was not only overrun by bandits who almost did her in as soon as she entered the place, but further down the path, the most remote confines of the catacombs were also overrun with giant insects with ridiculously sturdy carapaces. She eventually found Balthasar's body and a plot-convenient note about the bandits' plans. She learned that Risa had been taken to the bandits' hideout down south by the burning tree in the Emmekar forest. Alexandra then had to deal with some elite bandits who had her clearly outmatched. They would have easily killed her had it not been for the power of cheese and the fact that she always kept a boatload of arrows in her backpack, just in case. She eventually made it out of the catacombs and found herself somewhere in the Emmekar forest that she hadn't been to before. It was dark and Alexandra was tired as fuck, but time was of the essence, so she drank some of those miraculous teas and outward Red Bulls, rubbed some dirt on her wounds, and started heading towards the burning tree down south. It wasn't going to be an easy trip. Night had fallen in the Emmekar forest, and while it was not as bad as it was in Chersonese, dealing with the cold was always Alexandra's Achilles heel. So of course she had to resort to traveling with a torch and setting up occasional fireplaces, but she eventually made it to the bandit camp. Burning trees, firemen that reminded me of Ignis from Planescape Torment. I don't know what the hell that was about, but Alexandra cautiously took down the ones that were in her way and made it to the door of the hideout. She drank a couple of teas, ate a couple of those hit-harder meals to get ready, and then she ventured into their base. She almost got killed by two of the most inconsequential bandits, all because she couldn't fight properly in close spaces if her life depended on it, and because the target lock mechanic decided to bug out on her in that moment. No, this can't happen in a game in which dying has a realistic chance of being a game over or seriously setting you back. Fortunately, she managed to run straight out of the building, and thank a lot, the bad guys never chase you after you leave a location. So she cheesed the fight by going in and out of the building repeatedly, hitting and running, eating, drinking and bandaging up until both bandits were dead. She then liberated Risa and the other prisoner and thought, hey, this bandit hideout is kinda cozy and I haven't slept in days. She also had her luxury tent with her and enough crafting material to build a fireplace and set up a cauldron. I wanted Alexandra to claim that place and live there for, like, ever. But she settled for making herself at home for the night. She cooked a couple of meals, had some dinner, and went to bed till the next day. And much to my pleasant surprise, this was a risk-free area to camp. How about that? I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. She killed the bandits and closed the door behind her, so why wouldn't it be safe? Unfortunately, that's not the reasoning that Outward seems to follow for most locations, but it worked here. So Alexandra had a pleasant sleep and went back to Berg to see what had transpired. Apparently, the plot had thickened with the bandit attack, but once again, Alexandra was asked to go back to Cierso because there was some serious trouble brewing back in her hometown. So, of course, she made all the necessary preparations and set off to Cierso once again the next morning. The trip was rather uneventful until she got to Chersonese. Winter was still being a pain in the ass, so that gave her some pause, but she eventually found herself in her hometown once again, and she was immediately told that Kassite bandits were planning to raze the town to the ground in 3 days. Kassites, huh? Wait a minute, wasn't Eto Kassite? Maybe I could talk to him and ask for a few pointers. And as it turned out, he did have a few pointers to give. He told me that I could infiltrate the base if I wore a disguise and used a certain passphrase. He also said that in order to stop the invasion, I had to convince or coerce 3 captains. Good tip, I thought. So Alexandra procured the things that Eto needed to make the disguise, and once it was done, she took off to the bandits' hideout. Once she got to the bandits' fortress's premises, she set a temporary camp in a nearby location and left some valuables there just in case. And then she proceeded to attempt the infiltration. She could have of course not done the whole silly disguise thing and gone in all guns blazing, but she was a bit of a pussy, so she went with the disguise thing. Once inside the fortress, she decided not to talk to the first captain, who was in the room right next to the entrance, basically because I already knew from previous playthroughs that there was a high chance that he would turn hostile and make everyone else in the fortress hostile. So she gave the passphrase to the guards and went to talk to the second captain, a man named Rospa. Rospa told Alexandra that if she wanted him to call off the invasion on Cierso, she had to bring him Eto, the Kassite battle master who survived the shipwreck and taught her how to use her shield to charge, a guy who was overall a big figure in Cierso, kind of a local hero even. Alexandra said that she would do just that to avoid confrontation, but of course she had no intention of following through with her promise. She then moved on to the next captain, who wanted her to hunt her ex-husband down for being an asshole. Normally I would ask for further information before committing to such a request, especially when they come from an NPC bandit, but it turned out that the man had transformed into a Wendigo out of pure monstrous evil, and was by all accounts deserving of a sword through the middle. Problem was that he was at the other end of the ancient ruins near the Cabal of the Wind Tower. So for once in my life, or rather in Alexandra's short life, I decided to be efficient and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Alexandra still needed to learn a skill from the old hermit living there, and said skill would come in handy to kill the Wendigo, which also lived there. So I made a tactical/financial stop on Cierso, gathered a few resources, cooked some health restoration weather protection potions, and hit harder meals, and set off once again to the easternmost part of Chersonese. Luckily, Alexandra had already unlocked the alternate shortcut, so this time she made the trip in half the time. Once she arrived to the hermit's shack, she traded with the old man, learned a new skill from him, and immediately set off to kill the Wendigo. The entrance to his lair, however, was in the middle of some sort of corrupting mist, and temperatures had also dropped dramatically, so she had to watch out for both of these things. She managed to avoid corruption by climbing to the 2nd floor of a ruined building, but she couldn't take her sweet little time to prepare for the fight, because the night was falling and so was the temperature, and it fell to a point where not even a torch and the fireplace were enough to mitigate the cold with her current gear. I wasn't sure about this at all. Wendigos are among the toughest mofos in the game, and facing one in battle when you still haven't come full circle with your build is borderline reckless. Especially considering this is a game in which you absolutely don't want to die under any circumstance. So I took a deep breath and had Alexandra enter the Wendigo's lair. Much to my relief, he was dwelling somewhere far from the entrance, so she had the chance to prepare for a bit. You know, casting spells, taking potions, eating food, etc. And then I pulled him over with a couple of well-placed arrows, and when he was within range, the dance began. But Wendigos are extremely tough motherfuckers, so Alexandra eventually had to get the hell out of there. Some more preparation was required, clearly, but the outside of the Wendigo's lair was hardly the place to do that. She still climbed to her
safe space
and weathered the cold while she recovered some health, recasted spells, and drank some potions. She was eventually ready to face the Wendigo again, and since the mofo healed, she had to do the battle from scratch. This time she danced around with the beastie until they both fell down a cliff. Alexandra got lucky, however, that they fell down different paths, and that gave her time to chug a couple of life potions. My heart was about to burst, I tell you, but after a few minutes of desperate swinging and charging, the beast was finally down. Tired and injured, Alexandra left the Wendigo's lair, and cold and corruption finally crept in. She became infected with the mystical corruption and caught a cold in the process while she was agonizingly crawling her way back to the hermit's shack. The hermit offered shelter once again, and through the miraculous work of her trusty teas and a decent rest, she came back to life. Not as good as new, unfortunately, for corruption had taken over, but hey, it is what it is. Alexandra once again packed her bags and headed back to the bandits' fortress. She duly remembered to put her disguise back on and to leave the stuff that she wasn't going to need at her improvised camp just a few meters away from the fortress. Back inside the bandits' fortress, she went all the way to the final captain and told her that the Wendigo had been taken care of, which she already could feel because plot convenience, sixth sense in video games and all that shit. I then went to talk to Rospa Akiyuki, the man who wanted me to bring in Eto in exchange for calling off the invasion on Searso. And don't let the ridiculous name fool you. Last time I played the game, I thought I could take him on, and I was very wrong. I was unceremoniously defeated, imprisoned, and turned into a slave. I eventually escaped prison, but it was too late. I came back to Searso only to find out that the city had been reduced to cinders. I was left with no weapons, no gear, no town, and guilt weighing on my shoulders for failing the one mission that I had been entrusted with. Why did my previous character not take his own life that time, you may wonder? Well, because his philosophy was, if you are going through hell, keep going, which is really the only philosophy that you can have when playing Outward. And those memories came back to me as I remembered that there were only two ways the impasse with Rospa could be resolved, and I had already decided that I was not going to give him Eto. So once again, I had to face him in combat, but this time I had Alexandra on my side, and knowledge of how to do better at that fight. Know that the second time I played the game, I relied very heavily on traps, which are ridiculously efficient in this game if you use the right trap on the right enemy. So for that fight, I basically surrounded the bastard with traps and kited him into all of them one after another until he was no more. I tell you this just so that you consider that traps are a thing in this game, a very big thing. I just chose not to go down that path with Alexandra this time. This time I kited Rospa to the gates of his chambers and took him on a difficult melee mano a mano. His buddies came to help him, but luckily for me, Rospa was already down when they came. I still had to finish them off, of course, but they were easy pickings. But by killing Rospa, Alexandra had triggered a daring escape event, and now she was faced with the prospect of having to kill everyone on her way to make it out of there alive. So she riddled some of the bad guys with arrows, lured some others into an ambush, and took some others head on. She also seized the opportunity to liberate the slaves in the process. And then it was time to make her escape. She could have deliberately pulled the wrong chain in this room and used the trap to escape into an underground passage, or she could have just jumped into the unknown here, which were things that I did in my previous playthroughs, but Alexandra liked her chances, so she just came back the way she came in and carefully dispatched anyone who stood in her way until only the first captain remained. Fortunately for her, the dude bugged out pretty ridiculously and died stupidly. But that didn't stop me from feeling like the invincible badass that had saved the day. Going back to Searso and getting a simple thank you did, however. These fucking commies, I swear. I should have been revered like some fucking god. I saved all your asses from annihilation, and these 3 lines is all you have to say? Think of the loot, Alexandra. Think of the loot. So I went back and forth between the fortress and Searso because I wanted to sell every tiny little piece of loot that I earned there, submitting myself to the worst Outward has to offer, which is walking back and forth between locations when there is almost zero risk of failing. But when she was done, it was finally time to go back to the city of Berg. And so she did. On her way to Berg, Alexandra stopped by a Soroborian traveling merchant and procured some anti-fire gear. Once she arrived, she went straight to Risa, but the old hag didn't have anything more for her to do. She was going to have to wait for some days, so she bought some property as you do when you are bored, a very nice looking estate with an alchemy set, a kitchen, and even some pre-made meals. Not bad. Alexandra's previous success at the bandits' hideout in Chersonese made me feel pretty good about her chances in the world of Outward, so I thought it was time to finally take a crack at the most badass, scary, and difficult dungeon in the game. Why? Well, I knew about this hammer, It was crucial to Alexandra's build. I wanted it badly, and I wanted it now. So Alexandra fixed her equipment, learned a new skill that was relevant to her build from the trainer in Berg, brewed a few anti-heat and anti-cold potions, cooked a few pro-impact and anti-elemental damage food, and then started heading towards this Temple of Doom looking dungeon. Once inside, she talked to some dude who wanted her to get some treasure for him. She promised she was going to get it for him, which didn't happen. And then she climbed the rope down to the dungeon. These cheap Ignis impersonators gave her a lot more trouble than I was expecting, but nothing that couldn't be dealt with a little bit of tactical cheese. The place was hotter than Priscilla Ricard, even with all of Alexandra's anti-heat gear and potions. But she pressed on and eventually came upon this crossroads, where she had a bit of trouble with more fiery foes. She then shat her pants a little when this thing attacked her, and it took me a while to remember that ranged cheese was dangerous with this guy, and that melee combat was the way to go. Delving deeper into the dungeon, Alexandra eventually came to a zone with a drastic change of climate. A good place to set up a fireplace and do some cooking. And there in the distance, behind the iron gates, the coveted and very extremely dangerous prize could be spotted. But of course the gate couldn't be opened from her side, so she had to do a little dungeon crawling. She also spotted spirit skellies in the distance, which meant it was time to use a little spirit varnish. Alexandra cautiously navigated the labyrinthian dungeon, dealt with the spirit skellies when she needed to, took a break when she could, collected some of the sweet loot that some poor unfortunate bastards had left behind, and kept coming back to her little fireplace every once in a while. She eventually mapped the dungeon in her brain and prepared to take on the Wendigo. There was a cave right outside the Wendigo's lair that, oddly enough, had natural temperature. How very convenient. Alexandra set up a new fireplace there, ate some food, tended to her wounds, drank all the potions she needed, applied fire varnish to her weapon, and activated the skill she had just learned to fight the Wendigo. She then pulled the Wendigo out of its lair and into the room where she would have the advantage and started tangling with it. She had to run away a couple of times to chug all her remaining life potions, but after much toil and sweat, the Wendigo finally lied on the ground and the most abso-fucking-lutely badass weapon in the game in her hand. Or at least the most badass weapon for the build I was going for. Alexandra then took a break before committing to the last adventure that remained to be had in the dungeon. Another of these frightening but ultimately pussyish deers stood in her way. She made short work of it as though it weren't there with her new toy, and retrieved this incredibly badass weapon that would surely come in handy for those enemies that were resistant to cold. And then, off she went to Berg to see what the next step of Risa's quest was. Alexandra learned that the council was now at war with the Heroic Kingdom, also known as the guys who wrecked the council meeting and kidnapped Risa and Kerouac. If the Blue Chamber Collective was to stand a chance, they needed to recruit some serious badasses to the cause. They needed the Ash Giants. But as it happens in every video game worth its salt, this faction that was crucial to the success of the upcoming war had very little reason to join us. So of course we had to play politician as well. And of course these Ash Giants lived in the ass end of nowhere. Alexandra then went to her cozy new place, and the feeling of unease started taking over. Why can't she live here forever and ever, and make a decent living killing monsters and bandits, Witcher style? But my foolish sense of duty and wanderlust was more powerful, and I ended up discarding the thought. I cooked a few rations for the trip, did a little bit of alchemy, and then went to have a good night's sleep. I was kind of excited to finally visit a new area. Next morning I set out to the Hallowed Marsh, where the Ash Giants lived. The trip to the Hallowed Marsh was uneventful, but shortly after Alexandra had made it to the new area, she saw a bandit fighting a nasty monster. She thought she'd seize the opportunity and attack the creature, clearly the most dangerous foe of the two. She easily took care of the monster and then finished off the bandit as well. Her easy victory, however, gave her the wrong impression about these monsters. She saw another of those foul creatures in the distance and decided to engage it, just like she would a regular beast. Why not? After all, the last one didn't know what hit it. But her overconfidence, something that she had rarely shown in the past, would prove to be her downfall. By the time she realized that she was outmatched, it was already far too late. This foul, prowling beast from the hollow marshes, this irrelevant creature in the grand scheme of things, did what the bandit, the harsh weather, the diseases, and even the wendigos of the world couldn't do. It was a simple death for a simple person. It was the end. She wasn't meant to become the hero who would save the world. There would be no legends to inspire future generations about the lighthouse keeper from Searso. There would be no happily ever after alongside a significant other after retiring from a successful life of adventuring. Alexandra thought of this as the last embers of her life ebbed away. She wanted to make a change. She wanted to be a hero. She shouldn't have taken on that beast. She should have gone straight to Monsoon as was her plan. Should've, could've, would've. It made no difference. During the last recollection of memories, the final succession of stills that flashed before her eyes in her last moments, she remembered something someone had said a long time ago. All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you. And for all the bad decisions she made, not preparing for the winter in Chersonese, taking on the Wendigo when she was not yet ready, or the strange beast that ultimately ended her, she did do a few rather important things for some people other than herself. She did leave the world in a better state than she found it, and that was a comforting final thought. Wait, what? I didn't die? You open your eyes surprisingly comfortable and safe near a campfire. Someone must have rescued you. Alright. Well, that's the kindness of strangers for you, I guess. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, thank you for watching all the way up until now. If you like what you are seeing on this channel, please consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell to avoid the usual YouTube shenanigans. Come check us out on Discord if you don't mind all the boomer talk that goes on there. I personally love it and wouldn't change it for anything. And share the video if you thought it was cool. Bye everyone.